The Tesla's engine whispered to silence in Lucas Brooks' gravel driveway, shattering the 6 a.m. stillness. Through rain-streaked kitchen glass, he watched a girl emerge. 20, maybe 21, her movements careful, calculated. Designer heels clicked against wet pavement, incongruous beneath faded jeans and a threadbare college hoodie. She clutched a Louis Vuitton purse like a shield, fingers white-knuckled around crisp $100 bills that caught the pale morning light. Her phone erupted. Dad blazed across the screen in urgent capitals. She stabbed decline without hesitation, jaw clenched tight. "I'm Harper." "Harper Mills," she said when Lucas opened his door, voice honey smooth, but eyes darting past his shoulder like a cornered animal seeking escape. "I can pay 6 months up front." The bills fluttered between them, more cash than most college students saw in a year. Lucas studied her porcelain features, the tremor in her manicured hands, the $90,000 car humming behind her like a beautiful lie. Something about this girl whispered secrets wrapped in silk and shadows, and Lucas Brooks was about to discover that some tenants come with price tags that can't be measured in dollars. 3 months earlier, Lucas Brooks had stared at the foreclosure notice taped to his front door. The paper fluttered in the autumn wind like a death sentence, its red letters bleeding through the rain. His ex-wife's voice echoed in his memory. "You'll never amount to anything, Lucas." Just a dreamer with broken strings. She'd taken the car, the savings, and nearly his soul when she walked out 4 years ago. Left him with 9-year-old Stella and a house he couldn't afford on a guitar teacher's salary. The bank had been patient, but patience had limits. Even dreams had expiration dates. Now, watching Harper Mills count out $3,600 in cash, Lucas felt something shift inside his chest. His daughter Stella peeked around the corner, brown eyes wide with curiosity. The worn linoleum beneath Lucas's bare feet felt cold, matching the chill that ran down his spine. This girl, this impossibly polished stranger, was his lifeline. But lifelines sometimes came with anchors attached. "The room's upstairs," he said, pocketing the money before she could change her mind. Bathrooms shared. No parties, no overnight guests. Harper's smile never reached her eyes. Perfect. The first week passed like a carefully choreographed dance of avoidance. Harper emerged from her room only when Lucas left for work, her footsteps light as whispers on the old hardwood floors. She kept irregular hours. Sometimes her light glowed until 3 in the morning, other times her door remained closed until noon. Stella tried to engage her with shy waves and tentative smiles, but Harper remained politely distant. The refrigerator filled with expensive organic foods that Lucas couldn't pronounce, their price tags more than his weekly grocery budget. Still, Harper never complained about the house's creaking pipes or the temperamental heating system that coughed like an old man. On Thursday evening, Lucas found himself studying Harper through the kitchen window as she sat in the backyard, her MacBook balanced on her knees. The screen's glow illuminated her face in the gathering dusk, highlighting the tension in her shoulders. Her phone buzzed incessantly beside her, but she never answered. Always the same caller ID. Dad. The rejection was swift, mechanical, like swatting away persistent flies. Lucas watched her shoulders sag with each declined call, a weight settling over her that seemed too heavy for someone so young. Something twisted in his chest recognition, perhaps. He knew what it felt like to run from family expectations. Friday brought the first crack in Harper's carefully constructed facade. Lucas returned home early to find her pacing the living room, her voice low and urgent as she spoke rapid French into her phone. She froze when she saw him, the color draining from her cheeks like water from a broken dam. "Je vous rappellerai," she said quickly, ending the call. Her hands shook as she shoved the phone into her designer jeans. "Sorry, I didn't realize you'd be home so soon." Lucas nodded slowly, filing away the French, the tremor in her voice, the way her eyes couldn't quite meet his. "Everything okay?" Harper's laugh sounded like breaking glass. "Always." The expensive takeout containers began appearing in their trash bin with increasing frequency. Sushi from downtown restaurants that charged $50 for lunch. Organic salads from boutique cafes across town. Lucas did the math in his head. Harper spent more on a single meal than he budgeted for groceries in a week. When he gently suggested she could use the kitchen, she deflected with practiced ease. "I'm a terrible cook," she said, but Lucas caught her eyeing his piano with something deeper than casual interest. The old upright sat in the corner like a monument to abandoned dreams, its bench worn smooth by years of practice. Sunday evening changed everything. Lucas found Harper sitting at the piano bench, her fingers dancing across the keys with the fluency of someone classically trained. The melody was Chopin complex, haunting, perfect. Each note rang pure and true, filling the small living room with music that belonged in concert halls, not humble homes with second-hand furniture. Stella crept down the stairs, her pajama-clad feet silent on the worn carpet. She settled beside Harper on the bench, mesmerized. "Play the pretty one again," Stella whispered. Harper's smile transformed her entire face, erasing years and revealing something genuine beneath the polished surface. "This one's called Nocturne," she said softly. The piano became their bridge. Each evening after dinner, Harper and Stella would sit together at the keys, their heads bent in concentration. Harper taught with infinite patience, guiding Stella's small fingers across the familiar scales. Lucas watched from the kitchen doorway, dish towel forgotten in his hands, as his daughter blossomed under Harper's attention. The house filled with laughter for the first time in years, the sound echoing off walls that had grown accustomed to silence. But questions multiplied like shadows at dusk. Who learned Chopin at 21? Whose fingers moved with such trained precision? Tuesday brought the black SUV. Lucas first noticed it parked across the street during his morning coffee, its tinted windows impenetrable as armor. The driver never emerged, never moved, just sat watching their house with mechanical patience. When Lucas left for work, the SUV remained. When he returned 6 hours later, it was gone. But Wednesday it appeared again, this time parked 2 houses down. Harper's behavior shifted that day. Her eyes constantly darted to windows. Her phone calls became shorter, more frantic. She jumped at every sound, every creaking floorboard announcing an arrival. By Thursday, Lucas's patience cracked. He confronted Harper as she descended the stairs, her designer handbag clutched like armor against her chest. "Who's watching the house?" he asked quietly, mindful of Stella sleeping upstairs. Harper's face went porcelain pale. "I don't know what you mean." But her voice carried the tremor of someone caught in a lie too big to maintain. Lucas stepped closer, studying her face in the dim hallway light. The SUV, the expensive clothes, the French phone calls. "Either you tell me what's going on, or you pack your things tonight." Harper's composure finally shattered. Tears traced silver paths down her cheeks as she whispered, "You don't understand. If I tell you, you'll never be safe." Friday morning brought answers in the worst possible way. Lucas discovered the newspaper folded on his doorstep, its headline screaming in bold black letters. Tech heiress Harper Blackwell missing for 3 weeks. The accompanying photo showed his tenant at some charity gala, wearing a dress worth more than his annual salary. Her smile was camera perfect, but her eyes held the same trapped desperation he'd seen in his kitchen. The article detailed her father's Empire Blackwell Technologies, worth $47 billion. It mentioned a missing persons report filed by Raymond Blackwell, her father. Most chilling of all, it described the arranged engagement to Senator Harrison's son, a union designed to merge political power with technological influence. Lucas stared at the photograph until the ink seemed to blur. Harper Mills was Harper Blackwell, daughter of one of America's most powerful men. The girl sharing breakfast with his daughter each morning was worth more money than entire small towns. And she was hiding in his spare bedroom, paying rent with pocket change that represented generational wealth. His hands trembled as he folded the newspaper, questions cascading through his mind like dominoes falling in perfect sequence. The black SUV wasn't random surveillance, it was a manhunt with unlimited resources. When Harper descended the stairs an hour later, Lucas waited at the kitchen table, the newspaper spread before him like evidence in a trial. She froze in the doorway, her face cycling through emotions too quickly to catalogue: fear, resignation, relief, despair. "How long have you known?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lucas tapped the photograph with one finger. "About 5 minutes." Harper sank into the chair across from him, her shoulders sagging as if an invisible weight had finally become too much to bear. "I never meant for you and Stella to get involved." The truth spilled out like water from a broken dam. Harper explained the arranged marriage, a business transaction disguised as romance, her father's expectation that she marry Theodore Harrison III, a man twice her age with eyes like ice and hands that wandered during their forced dinner dates. The way Raymond Blackwell spoke about her future, as if she were stock to be traded rather than a daughter to be cherished. "I've never made a decision about my own life," Harper whispered, her voice breaking on the last word. Every school, every friend, every activity, all chosen to maximize his political connections. Lucas listened without interruption, recognizing the pain of someone whose dreams had been suffocated by other people's expectations. When Harper finished, silence settled over the kitchen like morning mist. Outside, the black SUV had returned, parked directly across the street with the audacity of predators no longer concerned with stealth. "They found you," Lucas said quietly. Harper nodded, tears streaming freely now. "My father's private investigators are very good at their job. I probably have until tonight before they knock on your door." The sound of small footsteps on the stairs interrupted their conversation. Stella appeared in her pink pajamas, hair tousled from sleep, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding in her kitchen. "Good morning, Harper," she chirped, climbing into her usual chair. Harper's face transformed as she wiped away tears and forced a smile. "Good morning, sweetheart. Did you practice your scales like we discussed?" The normalcy of their interaction made Lucas's chest tighten. His daughter had already grown attached to this girl, this impossible, complicated, dangerous girl who brought music back into their silent house. After Stella left for school, Lucas made a decision that surprised even him. "You're not going back," he said firmly. Harper's eyes widened. "Lucas, you don't understand what you're suggesting. My father has enough money to destroy your life without breaking a sweat. He could buy this entire neighborhood just to evict you." Lucas stood and walked to the window, studying the SUV's occupants through his kitchen curtains. "Maybe. But Stella calls you family now, and I don't abandon family." Harper's sob was barely audible, but it contained enough gratitude to fill the space between them. The confrontation came at sunset. 3 black vehicles pulled into Lucas's driveway with the precision of a military operation. Men in expensive suits emerged, their movements coordinated and efficient. But it was the man who stepped out of the middle car who commanded attention, Raymond Blackwell himself, silver-haired and imposing, wearing authority like a second skin. His presence seemed to compress the air around him, making the modest neighborhood feel suddenly small and insufficient. Lucas opened his front door before they could knock, Harper standing behind him with her chin raised in defiance. "Mr. Brooks," Raymond Blackwell's voice carried the weight of boardrooms and closed-door meetings. "I believe you have something that belongs to me." His eyes found Harper over Lucas's shoulder, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. "Hello, daughter. It's time to come home." Harper stepped forward, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "I am home." The words hung in the evening air like a challenge thrown down between armies. Raymond's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly, the only crack in his composed facade. "You've caused quite a stir," Raymond continued, his tone suggesting mild inconvenience rather than parental concern. "Theodore's been very patient, but the merger timeline requires your cooperation. The wedding is scheduled for next month." Harper's laugh was sharp as broken crystal. "I'm not marrying Theodore. I'm not marrying anyone you choose. I'm 21 years old, and I'm done being your business asset." Raymond's men shifted restlessly behind him, their hands drifting toward concealed weapons. Lucas stepped protectively in front of Harper, his carpenter's hands steady despite the adrenaline flooding his system. "With respect, Mr. Blackwell," Lucas said, his voice carrying the quiet strength of someone defending what mattered most. "Your daughter is an adult. She's made her choice." Raymond's gaze shifted to Lucas, assessing him like a buyer evaluating merchandise. "And what exactly are you offering her, Mr. Brooks? A life of poverty in this?" He gestured dismissively at the modest house. "Hovel? My daughter is accustomed to certain standards." His tone suggested Lucas was something unpleasant he'd found on his shoe. Harper moved to stand beside Lucas, their shoulders touching in a gesture of solidarity that spoke louder than words. "He's offering me something you never have, Father. Freedom to choose my own life." Raymond's composure cracked further, revealing glimpses of the ruthless businessman beneath the paternal facade. "Freedom is a luxury, Harper. Responsibility is reality. You have obligations to the family, to the company, to the empire I built for you." His voice rose slightly, the first sign of genuine emotion breaking through his controlled demeanor. "You built an empire for yourself." Harper shot back, her voice gaining strength with each word. "I was just another asset to be leveraged when convenient." The accusation hung between them like a sword, sharp and unforgiving. Raymond's men exchanged glances, uncomfortable with witnessing their employer's family drama. But Raymond himself seemed to deflate slightly, as if Harper's words had found their target with devastating accuracy. Lucas watched the interplay between father and daughter, recognizing the pain on both sides despite the harsh words. "Maybe we should all take a step back," he suggested quietly. "Stella will be home from school soon. Whatever you need to work out, she doesn't need to see it." Raymond's attention snapped to Lucas with laser focus. "Stella? Your daughter?" There was something calculating in his expression, as if he'd just discovered a new piece on the chessboard. "Leave her out of this," Harper said sharply, moving protectively towards the stairs where Stella would appear any moment. "This is between us." But Raymond was already smiling, a cold expression that didn't touch his eyes. "Actually, I think your situation clarifies things considerably. A single father, struggling financially, suddenly welcoming my runaway daughter into his home. How much is she paying you, Mr. Brooks?" The implication hit Lucas like a physical blow. "It's not about money," he said firmly, but Raymond's smile only widened. "Everything is about money, Mr. Brooks. The question is how much." He reached into his jacket and withdrew a leather checkbook. "Name your price. 100,000? 200? I'm prepared to be generous for your cooperation in returning my daughter home safely." Harper stepped forward, her face flushed with anger and humiliation. "Don't you dare!" she hissed at her father. "Don't you dare try to buy him like you've bought everyone else!" But Lucas could see the doubt creeping into her eyes, the lifetime of conditioning that taught her everyone had a price, everyone could be purchased. Raymond saw it too, his smile becoming predatory. $500,000, Raymond announced, his pen poised over the checkbook. "More money than you'll see in 5 lifetimes, mister. Brooks, all I ask in return is that you convince Harper to come home, to accept her responsibilities, to marry Theodore as planned." The sum hung in the air like a golden noose, beautiful and suffocating. Lucas could pay off his house, secure Stella's college fund, buy security for both their futures. Lucas looked at Harper, saw the resignation already settling into her shoulders like a familiar weight. She expected him to take the money, expected him to prove that her father was right, that everyone had a price, that loyalty was just another commodity to be purchased. "Dad!" Stella's voice called from the backyard, her footsteps approaching the kitchen door. "I'm home." "Did Harper teach you that song she promised?" The sound of his daughter's voice crystallized everything for Lucas. He looked at Raymond Blackwell, this man who had turned his own daughter into a negotiation, and felt something harden in his chest. "Keep your money," he said quietly. Raymond's pen froze over the checkbook. "I'm sorry." Lucas stepped closer, his voice gaining strength. "I said keep your money. Harper stays here as long as she wants. This is her choice, not yours, and definitely not mine to sell." Harper's sharp intake of breath was audible in the sudden silence. Her father's face cycled through disbelief, anger, and something that might have been respect before settling into cold fury. "You have no idea what you're refusing," Raymond said slowly. "No idea what you're getting yourself into." His voice carried undertones of threat that made his bodyguards shift restlessly. "Maybe not," Lucas admitted, "but I know what I'm not getting myself into. I'm not selling someone else's freedom for my financial security. I'm not teaching my daughter that people can be bought and sold like property." He paused, meeting Raymond's gaze directly. "And I'm not letting Harper believe that everyone in her life sees her as a transaction." Stella burst through the kitchen door at that moment, her school backpack trailing behind her like a banner. She stopped short when she saw the crowd of suited men, her eyes wide with confusion and growing fear. "Daddy!" Harper immediately moved to Stella's side, her hand finding the girl's shoulder protectively. "It's okay, sweetheart. These are just some people who are leaving." Raymond's gaze shifted to Stella, studying her with the same calculating intensity he'd shown Lucas. "You must be Stella," he said, his voice suddenly warm and grandfatherly. "Harper has told us so much about you." Stella pressed closer to Harper, her instincts recognizing something predatory despite the friendly tone. "Who are you?" she asked with the directness of childhood. "I'm Harper's father," Raymond replied. "I've come to take her home, but this is her home," Stella said with simple logic that cut through all the adult complications. "She lives here with us. She teaches me piano. She makes the best pancakes." Her innocent words seemed to hit Raymond harder than Harper's accusations or Lucas's defiance. For a moment, his composed mask slipped entirely, revealing something raw and uncertain beneath. Harper knelt to Stella's eye level, her voice gentle but serious. "Sometimes families are complicated, sweetheart. My father and I disagree about some important things." Stella considered this with the gravity of someone far older than her years. "Like when Mommy wanted you to live somewhere else, but you wanted to stay with Daddy?" Harper's eyes met Lucas's over Stella's head, understanding passing between them like electricity. "Something like that," Harper agreed softly. Raymond watched this exchange with an expression that shifted between anger and something that might have been longing. "Harper," he said finally, his voice stripped of its earlier authority. "Come home. We can discuss the Theodore situation, find another arrangement that suits everyone." It was the closest thing to a compromise Lucas had heard from him, but Harper was already shaking her head. "There is no arrangement that suits everyone," Harper said, standing slowly, "because you're still thinking of me as a problem to be solved rather than a person with her own dreams and desires." She took Stella's hand, the gesture both protective and grounding. "For the first time in my life, I'm exactly where I want to be." Raymond's composure finally cracked completely. "You want to throw away everything? Your education, your inheritance, your future, all for what? To play house with strangers?" His voice rose with each word, revealing depths of frustration and fear that had been building for weeks. "You think this is love, Harper? This is gratitude mixed with rebellion? In 6 months, when the novelty wears off, you'll realize what you've given up." Harper's response was quiet but steel strong. "Maybe I will. Maybe I'll make mistakes. Maybe I'll regret some choices. But they'll be my mistakes, my choices, my regrets, not yours." She paused, her voice softening slightly. "You gave me everything, Dad. Everything except the right to be myself." The accusation hung in the evening air like smoke from a funeral pyre, the death of a relationship built on control rather than love. Raymond's bodyguards waited for instructions, their hands resting casually near concealed weapons, but their employer seemed suddenly smaller, older, deflated. "You're making a mistake," he said finally, but the fight had gone out of his voice. "A mistake that will cost you everything you've ever known." "Then it's my mistake to make," Harper replied. Raymond looked at her for a long moment, memorizing her face as if seeing his daughter clearly for the first time. Then his gaze shifted to Lucas, assessment and warning mingling in his expression. "This isn't over, Mr. B. Brooks, when reality sets in, When the money runs out and the romance fades, remember that I offered you a way out." He turned toward his car, then paused. "And when my daughter realizes that freedom and security are rarely compatible, I hope you'll be man enough to encourage her to come home." The convoy departed as suddenly as it had arrived, leaving only the scent of expensive cologne and unspoken threats hanging in the twilight air. Harper stood in the doorway, watching until the tail lights disappeared around the corner. Her shoulders trembled slightly, whether from relief or delayed shock, Lucas couldn't tell. Stella tugged on Harper's hand. "Are you sad?" she asked with the directness of childhood. Harper knelt and pulled the little girl into a fierce hug. "No, sweetheart. For the first time in years, I'm exactly the opposite of sad." 6 months later, the house on Maple Street hummed with a different kind of music. Harper's inheritance remained frozen in legal battles, but she'd found work teaching piano lessons to neighborhood children. Her students adored her, and their parents paid enough to cover her modest needs. Lucas had expanded his guitar repair business, taking on more expensive instruments as word spread about his craftsmanship. The foreclosure notice was a distant memory, replaced by mortgage payments that no longer induced panic attacks. Stella's piano skills had blossomed under Harper's patient instruction, filling their evenings with Mozart and Chopin, and occasionally Harper's own compositions pieces that spoke of freedom found and families chosen rather than inherited. The black SUVs had disappeared after the first month, replaced by an understanding that some battles couldn't be won with money or pressure. Raymond Blackwell had made one final attempt at reconciliation through lawyers and intermediaries, but Harper's resolve remained absolute. On a warm Sunday morning in June, Lucas woke to the sound of laughter drifting up from the kitchen. He found Harper and Stella making pancakes, flour dusting their hair like snow, their faces bright with the kind of joy that couldn't be purchased or arranged. "Morning, sleepyhead," Harper called, not looking up from the griddle. "Stella's been telling me about her piano recital next week. Apparently she's nervous about playing in front of strangers." "She'll be fine," Lucas said, accepting the cup of coffee Harper offered. "She has the best teacher in the state." Harper's smile was radiant, transforming her face into something luminous and free. "I had a good teacher once too," she said quietly. "He taught me that sometimes the most important lessons aren't about music at all." Lucas understood. Some lessons were about courage, about choosing love over security, about building families from choice rather than circumstance. As they sat around the breakfast table, sunlight streaming through windows that no longer held the weight of foreclosure notices or empty promises, Lucas reflected on the girl who had appeared in his driveway 6 months ago with designer shoes and desperate eyes. Harper Blackwell had become Harper Mills through more than just a false name. She had become the person she was meant to be, free from the golden chains of inherited expectations. The phone rang occasionally with calls from blocked numbers, but Harper no longer flinched at the sound. Her father's world continued to spin without her, mergers and acquisitions proceeding according to schedules that no longer included her as a commodity. Sometimes Lucas wondered if she missed the luxury, the security of unlimited resources. But watching her teach Stella to play Chopin with infinite patience, seeing her face light up when neighborhood children mastered difficult passages, he had his answer. Some treasures couldn't be measured in stock portfolios or trust funds. Some wealth existed in Sunday morning pancakes, in piano lessons that ran late, because the student was finally getting it, in goodnight kisses from a little girl who called you family not because of biology, but because of choice. Harper had traded a fortune for freedom, and in Lucas's humble opinion, she'd gotten the better end of the deal. That evening, as Stella practiced her recital piece in the living room, Harper joined Lucas on the front porch swing he'd recently repaired. The Tesla was long gone, replaced by a sensible used Honda that Harper had purchased with her teaching income. "Any regrets?" Lucas asked quietly, watching his daughter's silhouette bent over the piano keys through the window. Harper was quiet for so long he thought she hadn't heard the question. "Just one," she said finally. Lucas felt his stomach tighten, preparing for the confession he'd been dreading, that comfort and security eventually trumped love and freedom. Harper turned to face him, her eyes clear and certain. "I regret that it took me 21 years to understand that family isn't about blood or money or obligation. It's about people who choose to love you not because they have to, but because they want to." She reached for his hand, her fingers intertwining with his calloused ones. "People who see you at your worst and decide to stay anyway." Lucas squeezed her hand gently, understanding flooding through him like warm honey. "For what it's worth," he said quietly, "I think you chose exactly right." Harper's answering smile could have powered the neighborhood streetlights. "I know I did." From inside the house, Stella's piano filled the evening air with music. Not perfect, but honest. Not polished, but full of heart. It was, Lucas thought, a pretty good metaphor for the life they'd built together. Imperfect, unexpected, but absolutely right. The girl who had knocked on his door with designer shoes and desperate eyes had become something else entirely. Daughter, teacher, partner in the daily miracle of making a family from scratch. And Lucas Brooks, who had once thought his best days were behind him, discovered that sometimes the most beautiful music came from the most unlikely combinations. Sometimes the richest people were those who had learned the difference between having everything and having enough.